Hello, class. How are you? This is Dr. Annette Feravich. I am here now, so I don't need to be right back with the final large, long classroom of the day, which is our philosophical classroom. So thanks for joining me if you are. It has been kind of a heavy duty week, as they all seem to be for everybody. So I had quite a few revelations today and didn't really have one for this class. But you'll get a whole lot of revelations if you go back to the earlier classrooms. Not that it's not worth sitting here for this classroom, because this is where we're going to get into really the heavy duty stuff. Hold on. That really is oh, wrong class, sorry. You got to give me a sec. Even though you can see some of the topics are similar, right? Robber's Cave that we talked about in our spiritual classroom. Actually, because some of the revelations came up in the spiritual classroom about Robber's Cave on last Wednesday, right? So we talked about that on Thursday. On Wednesday, came up to me on Tuesday, actually, right? And I talked about Robber's Cave on Wednesday when we weren't here in the philosophical classroom on Wednesday. We're only here on Tuesdays and Thursdays for this classroom. So I was talking about Robber's Cave when it came to me, some of the information, as I've been talking about some of the information as it comes to me in this classroom as well. So hold on one sec. Okay, there we have it. Just had to get my slides up. I didn't have those slides up for this classroom. So, okay, so there we are. Yeah, actually, I guess I did get my thoughts together, but not everything together for this class, which I'm disappointed in a little bit. So, I put these slides together, and then I just realized I didn't add the first two slides that I started putting these together. The reason I started putting all of these together, which was for the Scientology. But I'm going to go ahead and go with what I've got in my mind right now. And that is, how did this come to Scientology? How did this group think come to Scientology? Well, I'm so disappointed that I don't have a couple slides up here, and I want to get those couple slides up here, and I'm going to do that because I'm so disappointed that I don't have them up here. So I'm thinking about a song. I think there's a song I could do. I think so. I'm gonna do the be right back, but then I'm gonna do a song, and then hopefully that will be enough time for me to get my stuff done that I want to get done. Why isn't this evening up like it's supposed to? So this is Caitlin Smith, and I have just come to love her music and the way that she writes all of her stuff and the lyrics and everything about her. And really, and I could say that again, and everything about her is really just seems to be pretty incredible. So let's see here. Well, I can't play it. It's saying I'm not connected to the internet, and I know I am because I can see that I have an excellent connection. But this happens and it forces me to turn the internet on and off, and I don't want to do that. So we're not going to be able to hear some music. So let me I still want to pull up a couple things. So I'm going to do that. Okay, I am back. I am sorry for that long pause, but I really have been getting ideas, and this was really important to me to talk about. And so I decided that I really wanted to put up these new slides, which again, I said I went back to do, but when I looked at the slides that I had, I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't report on half these slides that I have up here. So we have a lot to talk about. But in this group think concept, I keep getting these different ideas. So I keep updating honestly as I go along. It's the way that I, was as a teacher, but not quite this klutzy. As a teacher, I obviously couldn't keep my students waiting for 15 minutes, but I can keep you waiting for 15 minutes, And so what was it? What was it that I was missing here? And the thing that I'll get started with here, and I'll eventually get a picture of this, but I'm going to go ahead and get started with this, and then we'll keep talking about what we're going to talk about. So we've been talking about this groupthink and this national ideology, and I also talked a lot about Robber's Cave as well, right? So, and I'm going through here. Actually, I know where I want it to be. To kind of show you, as a reminder of some of these definitions that we had, right, already that we've talked a long time about, to get this concept of group. And that group has an essence, and almost it creates a psychological capacity, is the word I'm thinking right now, for us to understand, right? So this group dynamic, this is our understanding of a group, essentialism creates a psychological capacity for us to understand it, because it's a psychological concept, right? Group, when you say Chinese Americans, there's a psychological concept that goes with that. There's a physical concept, which was based on a psychological concept, right? So that's what we're talking about. So as I added a few slides to this, and I was like, okay, yeah, but then I forgot that my so much of my focus, which I probably won't even be able to get to, of this philosophical class really right now is about this. It's about Scientology. What this has gotten me to, and so I have been jumping in information, right? And I've got past information that I am what we call assimilating and contrasting specifically with new information that I keep getting. And I get these, in my classes that I'm, and then I go and pull up past things I've done, and it comes up with this. Especially when you think about where we are, politically, socially, spiritually, emotionally, all of these things come up. And those are all part of what we understand to be our concepts of groups, of reality, of a psychological, reality or physical reality or whatever. What is it that we use? And so what do we use when we're coming up with this, psychological concepts that we have? So I'm saying, okay, well, I hope that I know I'm recording. I'm not seeing that this is actually streaming. And my guess is it's got something to do with being, saying it's not hooked up to the internet. So, give me a sec. I'm gonna do a twirly over here. What do I mean by a twirly? It's gonna turn off the internet now so I could see what's going on over here. And Yeah, I don't know. When I can't see it streaming and it's saying what it's supposed to be saying, I don't know if you can see it or not and what's going on there live. But I got all of this now so I can see it and I know what you can see. And so that's good. Hopefully, I know, I don't know if it came out live the way it's supposed to, but I do know that it's coming out in my recorded, and it will be there in the edited version. So let's go ahead and see where we are at from here. So what I'm talking about is whatever we are experiencing, in particular psychologically, because that's the experience that we're talking about. I mean, I could experience something physically, right? And so I could get a shot and experience something physically, but experiencing it physically has nothing to really, not nothing to do with, but it doesn't compare to what my psychological experience is. It could be like no big deal, right? Or it could be that it's a very, very scary experience for young kids, for example. So what are those components that are involved when we are talking about this kind of psychological experience, which again is what we are basing our impressions of groups on? So what do we do? What do we get this psychological concept that we have, essentialism of a group? Where do we get it? We get it through these three components. We get it through, now most often we feel like it comes from a behavioral component, so that middle component there. How do we get a psychological feeling about a group? Essentialism. What is the essential or the essence that we get from a group? What's it based on? Well, it's based on there in the middle there, that would be behavior. So we see them act in a certain way, a group act in a certain way, and that gets us to believing certain things, right? But also there's a feeling component to it. So we call that affective. So these are the ABCs of psychology, of the essence of something, right? ABCs of social, actually it's ABCs of social behavior, of social phenomenon, I would have to say. Social psychology is what it is. What are the three components of social psychology? So they're the ABCs of social psychology. Those are the scientific terms that we would give these, and also a way to remember them, an acronym ABC, a way to remember them. But you, of course, can remember them in easy ways, but you have to think about these components in, logically and philosophically, logically. So when we see a group, we of course base our opinion about that group, right? Our psychology about that group, the essence of that group. Of course, we base that on behaviors of the group, the B there right in the middle, but we also base it on what we call affect. That's not affect, it's affect. Affect here, it's the only time that affect is being used as a noun. AFFECT is used as a noun. Person, place, or thing is a noun, right? A person, place, or thing. This is the thing. Emotions. Affect, AFFECT, is used as a noun only when it means emotions. So what else do we apply to a group? Emotions we apply to that group. Of course we apply those to a group for us to judge that group. And when we see certain characteristics of a group, just there, right in our vision, right in plain sight, like the color of a group, like the age of that person, like the physical characteristics of that person, like the behaviors of that person or of that group, brings on emotions right away. We don't stop and think about the emotions. They come on board and are queued up as soon as we see physical aspects of that group. All right? So we see behaviors, and the behavior could be just that I see your color, right? I could see that you're in a wheelchair at a certain age. So I see these things, right? So that's the behavior that I see. And then there's an affect that comes on board. It can be anger, but it can be compassion as well. It can be, we have a whole range of emotions. It can be happiness. It can be curiosity, right? It can be a sense of responsibility. It can be empathy. It can be, a whole host of feelings that come on board. We do this with an individual, but we're talking about group think. It also comes on board, we engage in group think about that group. And when engaging in this group think, emotions come on board as well. Automatically, at the same time, right at the same time. Two different canals there. So they can come on board at the same time, right? Our heart rate can increase while we're thinking. Box number 3 up there, cognitions and behaving in a certain way. So we've got 3 clear different avenues, right? That are all spiritual classroom regulated by the brain. Approach, avoid, approach, avoid, approach, avoid. Those are our behaviors. Approach, avoid, approach, avoid. What do? Well, it's based on our feeling that we have that was cued up by physical characteristics of the group, of the scene, right? Is it a group that's praying? Is it a group that's climbing the Capitol building, right? Both of those groups bring on different feelings. Even just saying those group names, right? Even saying climbing on the Capitol building to some people brings about immediate emotions that are adversary, anger, all kinds of things. Just even mentioning the group. And I can picture in my head when I say that group, climbing on the Capitol building, in case you can't see that over there. It was me, climbing on the Capitol building. Oh, get this other one. Hey, Trav, there's your bear. Okay, all right, so ABCs. The third one is the thoughts that we have about that group, right? And so this is interesting because what prejudice is the feelings. Those are feelings that we have about certain groups. And often those feelings are brought about by many people, right? Or enough people to have a stereotype, what we call a stereotype. What's a stereotype? A way that we group people, the way that we think. That's a thinking thing. That's our cognition. Oh, that way, over there. That way, over there. It's so counterintuitive. I'm pointing out into space over here. Okay, so number 3 over there. Number 3 over there. Oh, I'm going to get this right. There we go. I just got to go this way. All right, further this way. Look I'm getting it. There. So number 3, cognition is those are our thoughts. Those are our thoughts about groups. So, and then notice there's this balance that comes, right? When we think about groups, there's this balance. I think about their behaviors, or I see their behaviors, and then they get processed. Behaviors get processed. So I see their behaviors, or I think about them, they get processed, but then all at the same time, what happens? Feelings. All right. So that's how this works. So back to what we're talking about. So Robber's Cave came up because I said something in this class about Robber's Cave, right? Actually, I brought it up in another class, and that is how I got onto this groupthink idea, right? Is actually because I brought it up in another class, and then I began reading and doing research at the same time. Again, I'm pulling existing knowledge, existing PowerPoints. That was the one you're looking at right now, was one that I've been using for years in my classroom, right? But the next few, I haven't used in my classroom. So by the grace of God, because we have a spiritual classroom, I had pulled this out. I was just looking through things that I thought were interesting. And again, these were books that I had from Lynn Anderson. So these were all things that I got from Lynn Anderson's collection Although most of them were marked, and it's interesting that this one was not marked, but there would be no reason for me to have this, of course. But I'm sure in a court of law, why wasn't the book that every other book from Lynn Anderson? How do you know? But interestingly, it wasn't Lynn Anderson's book because it was a library book, right? This is a library book. So I happen to pull this out. This is a subcommittee on investigations of Committee on Government Operations, United States Senate, 84th Congress. And as I said, that in the very beginning of this, it says that this is for public knowledge regarding Chinese communist, immoral, unethical, and illegal methods of interrogation. So this is not for us to find out for our own personal use what they are. They're for us to be able to protect our democracy, because obviously if they're using these tactics abroad, so not locally here at the United States, if and when they have the opportunity, they would be using them here in the United States. And I happen to think that they had the opportunity with our last president, but that's neither here nor there, because one way or another, this is an experiment in democracy, and whether or not democracy actually can last, and whether or not people are better off being told what to do and being investigated like they're animals, as in the Robbers Cave experiment, or whether or not we are better off being able to have an opinion in our futures. And again, fascism is based on the idea that you aren't equipped enough. Everyone is not equipped enough. Fascism says superior race is equipped enough to make those decisions. You're not equipped enough to make those decisions. And some of these experimental experiments were outcomes of World War II and Nazi Germany. And if this is an experiment taking a look at the benefits and problems with capitalism, along with the benefits and problems with communism, and deciding what the people want, then we could see that this really can be an ultimate experiment. I might say that this experiment started with the last president, but that's simply not true, and all of you know it. And all of you know that this mess didn't start with the last president. So whatever this mess is, I'm calling an experiment, because it was called an experiment, and that does not make anybody able to get away with what they're doing, because I happen to think and theorize, and with great confidence, that our government, the real people who are behind the government and who are commanding our army, really know everything that's going on, because they've been collecting evidence, not for nefarious reasons. I don't believe that. I believe that there are contractors out there, and that there are communists out there, and that there are individuals who base most everything that they're doing on self-interest. But I don't believe, honestly, that those people are running the show. Communists aren't running the show. So people with self-interest are not running the show. Do you want them to run the show? Do you want them to run the show? That is the big ultimate question here in the American experiment, which we've been talking about philosophically in this class, spiritually in our spiritual class, critically in our critical thinking class, very specifically looking and learning about our history. And did I miss a class? I don't know. In our early bird classroom, we're talking about scripture, right? We're getting children to know that all stories that we have, all of our stories that we have, are stories that come from the original Bible stories, all of our stories. So everything is really, coming out here in this philosophical classroom. And so sometimes all of the classrooms seem a little bit, but the bottom line here in this philosophy and group think is, are you a sheeple? Because that the irony is that the people who are acting like sheeple are people who are for communist ideology and fascist ideology. They just haven't been taught what that is. They haven't been taught enough history, and that's been systematic and that's been purposeful. And it is demonstrated here, the very specific strategies that communists are using, and we clearly see these playing out here in the United States right now. These strategies being played out here in the United States right now. So let me read a couple of them, right? I wrote a note here. I didn't pick these out to read. I highlighted them, so I'm going to read some of the highlights that I had here. It was therefore necessary in each instance when appraising whether a man withstood a great deal or offered unusual resistance to ascertain how much pressure was applied. All right, so they're saying in this, the individuals who are able to resist the groupthink and propaganda were actually American soldiers. And so actually the Chinese fascist communist soldiers were not able to withstand this kind of brainwashing in order to give up secrets. Now, there were a few Americans, but not even 10% of the Americans. So 10 out of 100 did not give up secrets, where you've got about 2/3 of the Chinese under these tactics that would. What is the system of belief that is different? And that's the real experiment here. We've got to think about this philosophically. What is the real experiment? The real experiment is, do we think as individuals, or do we follow along with the group no matter what? Did you follow along with that last president no matter what he said? Many people did, no matter what he said and did, because you believed what he was saying. So you threw away your rules and your morals and your integrity because he certainly had zero integrity. And climbing that Capitol building demonstrated no integrity. You looked like a bunch of monkeys climbing that Capitol building. And if you think it's racist, it's because you are. That's not a racist statement. You look like a bunch of monkeys, and I've said it before, climbing that Capitol building. So those are animals. So you are following along like a bunch of animals. So by the very definition, some of these communist tactics are working on many people. Why? Because they're not educated in the tactics. I've always said, why did people follow and fall for Milgram's study? They followed and fell for Milgram's study because they didn't know the results. If somebody told you that 2/3 of the people are going to go all the way on the shock generator, remember that, right? So 2/3 of the people are going to go all the way on the shock generator. You probably wouldn't go all the way on the shock generator. You would know. That's what I'm doing. I'm teaching you what their tactics are so that you know. But when you read these tactics, and this is in the subcommittee report that was published in 1956. 1956 was when these hearings were. And this is when they discovered the tactics. And now what I'm saying to you is that these tactics were studied in these experiments, but further and illegally in this Robbers Cave study. And you will see then that there is a connection between Robbers Cave, between Scientology, and between North Fox Island in northern Michigan here. And what I'm saying is that the strategies of groupthink that we see taking place right now with individuals who are screaming for their rights are outcomes of experiments that have been being done on the American public, especially for poor people. I said this in my mysteries, that I believe that most of my family was one way or another sold into, I didn't say most of my family, I said me. Now I know many of my family members were sold into this experiment. Why? Because poor people would. Just like the Tuskegee study. Why did they were getting something out of it? It's no different. It's no different. And philosophically speaking, these individuals believed in inhumane treatment, sexual abuse. I don't know how to express it anymore than this. Inhumane treatment. That's what these people believed in. And again, with their names over here, I want to find out who O.J. Harvey is, because I think those are two people. Who is B.J. White? Who's B.J. White? B.J. Really? Again, this is what was going on. Sexual abuse at its highest level by tyrants, by dictators, by people who came from a dictatorial government and were doing experiments on American people to see whether or not these communist tactics could break down the human spirit. That's it. I could just click off right now. I could click off right now because that's what's going on here. And you can do this. I've gone out a little bit on a rabbit trail with Scientology, although I will keep speaking on it, right? I'm going to keep drawing that connection here with you. And also then North Fox Island. What I'm saying is that what was taking place on North Fox Island, so look in the mysteries, look that up. What was taking place on North Fox Island, they have names of people there that were at Wayne State University, instructors that were at Wayne State University. Those are the same names as individuals on North Fox Island that were reporting this. What I'm saying is that North Fox Island is an outcome of the studies that were being done here by Mustafa Sharif and Carolyn Sharif, and the other people in the middle. Those people may exist. They were there. They were likely there as the counselors there, is likely what they were. So OJ, the juice, was likely there as a counselor. And I know Harvey. And I know Harvey. And I know Harvey. I haven't put it all together, but I know Harvey. I'm almost sure of it. And you might know Harvey too. Okay. It has appeared that they can force men to confess to crimes which have not been committed, and then apparently to believe in the truth of their confessions and express sympathy and gratitude towards those who have imprisoned them. And what I wrote is, this can only be because of imprisonment is better than the psychological torture being applied. There is no way that somebody would would confess to something, a crime they didn't commit, show sympathy and gratitude towards those who have imprisoned them if it wasn't better than what they were experiencing psychologically. If imprisonment wasn't better than what they were experiencing psychologically. There's no way that they would respond with gratitude and sympathy to their people who are imprisoning them unless it was better for them to be imprisoned than this psychological treatment that they were getting. And you can bet your bottom dollar that imprisonment was better than this. That imprisonment was better than Fox Island, North Fox Island. And I'll tell you another thing that is going on here that is very clear to me. And what the test is the test, the experiment, the ultimate experiment is at a university level is mixing up our DNA. That's what's going on. And if you want to know, spiritually speaking, how can the father have a non-sexual birth of a child, an immaculate conception? Very easily in this day and age, isn't it? And if we can do it in this day and age, I'm quite certain that God could do it in his day and age. We can absolutely have sperm from a male be placed in a female and have an immaculate conception, couldn't we? And with mixed DNA and holding DNA, you can certainly implant a son into a mother. and sit back and watch what happens. And you know what? I know what happens. I know what happens. And it's not because I've experienced this with my son, although some people would like to believe that because that's what they're testing for. There's an attraction there then. There's going to be a natural DNA attraction that a mother has for a son. It's written in our DNA that we would be naturally attracted to things even like their scent, for example, right? And so if I separated a mother from her natural son, would they find one another? And I say yes. And I say yes. But with such a sexualized environment and such an incomprehensible kind of relationship or love that you have this real neural biological attraction for somebody else that you can't express. Why? Because DNA was separated. That's the reason why. You think that that's not what they were doing? You think that we are still in a stage where we are cutting people open and that we don't have technology that's well beyond that? When I can pick up a cell phone and talk to somebody across this planet, we don't have the technology beyond cutting somebody open in that barbaric way of doing heart surgery. You know, GD well we do. You know, GD well we have a better way of doing heart surgery, and they haven't sprung it on us. They've sprung it on the people in Congress. They've sprung it on the 1%. They've sprung it on those contractors who are effing up our reputation in this around the world. Those contractors who are not part of our real military are effing up our reputation across this world. You know what? It's going to come down. It doesn't matter. We are in control. The American government, who's really running the government, who knows the technology, they really are running the show. They want to know what you want. They're not going to run this show for you when you don't want a democracy. They're not going to run this show for you when you want to go and kneel down in front of the medical industry, when they are pulling you by the nose, calling it science. They're not going to break their balls for people who don't appreciate the ball breaking that they do. So what I'm seeing here again is, now when I read that, so it has appeared that they can force men to confess to crimes which have not been committed, and then apparently to believe in the truth of their confessions and express sympathy and gratitude towards those who have imprisoned them. Now, it goes on to say that that's expected based on their psychological torture that they have been doing. So they give the step-by-step psychological torture. First method is used by state police in communist countries, are elaborations and refinements of police practices. We have the state police who are acting in communist ways. What they are doing is they are applying their own law in the way that they want to. That's what communist countries do. They talk about in here how they apply that. How do they apply it? Did somebody tell them how to apply that law? And it was no. It was inferred. How are the state police deciding to apply laws today? How are they deciding to apply laws? Based on something that somebody told them? No. Based on an intuition that we apply laws for those people who can give us something in return, whatever it is. Contractors apply the laws. Union people apply the laws in ways that I can get something in return. Police apply the laws in ways that they can get something in return. More power, right? More what? White supremacist, right? More power is what the police are. So everyone is applying the law the way that they want to apply it. That's communism. That's communism 101. Here's communism 101. Pay attention, folks, because you are being led by the nose right into a communist country. And what you end up with is, pay attention to my book on Christopher Columbus that I had earlier today. You end up with books of material that mean nothing. I've said, when these people were imprisoned, what did they say? Let me see if I can't find it. Well, here it says, why the only plausible way out of his intolerable situation is the acceptance of their point of view, associated with feelings of relief that are occasionally exhilarating and sometimes show some of the features of a religious conversion for those people who decided to break their will. But again, it said the most people that decided to break their will were those people who were communists, and it just says there's something to be said for about American truly trained American military. Percentages of death of prisoners in our custody is slightly under 2%, as opposed to, if you recall, 38%, I said 2/3, it's over 1/3. 38% of our people who died in their hands. So in communist hands, 38% of our military soldiers died, compared to 2% of their military soldiers died here in our prisons. And if you think you need to boost it up to 38%, you know what you need to do? You need to leave this country and go to a communist country, because that's the way that they work. I suggest Korea, North Korea, that you go to, because that's who they're talking about right here. If you agree with 38% of their soldiers being killed, then go to Korea, because that's the way they do it. That's the way they do it. So go to Korea. And you know what my guess is in these end days is what's going to happen is you're going to get shipped exactly where your ideology will fit best. They're going to ship you right there. Exactly. There's no more prisons here, because we can't, I haven't seen anyone go to jail for anything that they've been doing around here in my mysteries. I see them walking around and doing whatever. My guess is they're going to get shipped someplace. When the bell tolls, when the clock ticks, when the clock strikes, you're getting shipped. You're getting shipped exactly where you belong, with the people who have that ideology. So good luck with your North Korean communist ideology. You and your Kim Jong Jews, whatever that, I don't mean to say that in that way, because that was right. Go over there in North Korea. Kim Jong-un, whatever. So another thing, like our state police are getting almost no training here. So it says most of them were Puerto Rican extraction and had come from New York. Many of them spoke very little English. I merely want to say about these drafted Marines that they became quite good Marines. So you can't write it off just by the mere fact of their being volunteers. So these were Marines that were volunteers, but what were they doing? They were uneducated people who barely spoke English. Why? So they could follow the rules. That's the reason why they are uneducating us. They are de-educating us. But here, we have practically no record of any Turkish soldier deviating. So imprisoned Turkish soldiers did not fall prey, and a few did, low percentage of our American soldiers did not fall prey to giving up information to the degree that the Koreans did. I want to get these words. Oh, some of the ways also that they took, and the only letters that they ended up getting from their loved ones were basically letters. So here, communist countries, what do? This is fascist countries. They were reading their mail and only giving them mail that had bad news. Like basically, they were getting Dear John letters. If there were pictures in there, the pictures were taken out. So they weren't getting any correspondence from individuals, from their loved ones. And then what ends, okay. They're talking about insanity for these prisoners of war. And the term insanity is not a medical, but a legal term. And the term insanity lends credence to the idea that the communists have something which can destroy people's minds and drive them insane and relieve them of their personal responsibility for their actions. That's what the communists are selling. Relief of pain, pharmaceuticals, that can, from the insanity, the chaos that they've created through this mess of military mess and contracting and money-making mess, and relieve them of their personal responsibility for their actions, climbing on the Capitol building. Okay. The Chinese doctors who practiced medicine on our prisoners of war were a sort of motley crew insofar as their background in medicine was concerned. On the average, although there was one exception to their medical training had consisted of everything from no formal training whatsoever. Is that what's happening with our personnel? With no formal training whatsoever, to approximately 6 months in a hurry-up aid man course designed for bandaging, something similar to the course which we send our aid men to. They had a needle doctor, which was a pure-out quack. Any prisoner who would come on to sick call complaining of pain in any part of the body, for example, I will say headache, was treated by the needle doctor in the following manner. A short, rather blunt needle, which was connected to a spring device and a handle, was placed immediately under the skin in various mysterious spots on the head. After the needles were placed, the doctors would very scientifically thump the handle of the needle so the spring would cause a vibration in the needle. This was hardly scientific medicine, but it did cure some headaches. Of course it did. But the purpose was, don't come for treatment. Otherwise, somebody's going to put a blunt needle in your forehead that does absolutely nothing. It treated headaches only because somebody's going to say, fine, stop your nonsense. My headache is gone. And what they said here, the words were, they did chicken liver. Here's where the chicken liver studies went. So they literally put chicken liver, and then remember those? Remember the magician guy was pulling those chicken livers out? Where'd that come from? That came from communist China. That's where that idea came from. And we see some people who are practicing that kind of voodoo medicine. But the quote that I wanted to get to was, basically, these people were starving. Which is, and now I can't find it, which is the comment that they made that when they were caught, they knew that everything was up for grabs, that those Chinese prisoners, guards, whatever, army, could do anything to them that they wanted to do. And so that, and to stand your ground as an American soldier when they knew that the Chinese government could do anything to them because they had no rules or regulations, for our soldiers is an atrocity beyond belief, right? To go into that and to try and go through something like that and be fearless about it, right? I can't imagine maintaining, your courage through something like that, knowing that there is a rule there that says they can do anything psychologically to you. They didn't do very much, they said, Korean communists didn't do, Chinese communists did not do a lot of torture, physical torture. It was mental torture. You gave up on yourself is what they did. And what I'm saying is right now in this country, we are seeing exactly the same tactics being used on our people here. And it started with it started a long time ago, but we can see that this new generation of misinformation that creates chaos for people to believe that anything can happen in the United States of America and it will be legal for that to happen to you is a crazy thought here in this country. It is not marked at all with democracy, and people need to be educated on what fascism is and what communism is, because those are the tactics being used in this country right now as it relates to groupthink. And if you're acting like an animal, chances are you have fallen victim to communist propaganda, and you have to know what that means in the long run. Okay, this is Dr. Annette Feravich. I will be back here at 3:15 for our reading room, where we are going to continue our Goosebump book, which is Be Careful What You Wish For, It Might Come True. All right, thanks for listening. This is Dr. Annette Feravich in the classroom. More specifically, we are in the philosophical classroom. I will be back here on Thursday to talk about those pictures that I went and plopped up there and then didn't even use. All right, thanks for